Ja. Yeah, all right.
He's a
Absolutely charming. Yeah.
He's wonderful. Yeah.
Sehr gut. Auch ist ja schon die Erkrath. Ich wollte nur das Gespräch
Ach so. Ach.
I must not miss Chet.
I must not miss it. Martin, ist hier keine Zeitanzeige? Abgelaufene Zeit wird nicht angezeigt im Display.
Du musst einfach aufs Rekord drücken.
Okay, can we start with some music? Track number 1. And number 2 as well. So, gentlemen, welcome in Erkrath.
Thank you.
My mic on?
Hello.
Yes.
I must tell you, Martin, just before you ask a question, the first piece of music you played was Welcome by the Steve Miller Band.
Right.
And that piece of music was always used by Johnny to start his program. And there are 4 little breaks in it where he would say, "Good evening, welcome to the program, da-da-da-da-da-da." Then he'd say, "I'm Johnny Jason, da-da-da-da-da-da." Yep. And if you got a mention in it, it was considered to be, you'd made it. But one night, Norman Barrington edited the beginning of Welcome by the Steve Miller Band, and instead of 4 breaks, there were 5.
Completely stumped.
And Johnny's going, "Good evening, da-da-da-da-da-da." And when he thought he'd finished on the 4th one, the 5th one came in. Very naughty. And the other one was Soul Coaxing by Raymond Lefebvre, which I used in the 1960s. On Caroline.
And on R&R.
Did I?
Yes.
You've got a better memory than me.
So let's start with the 60s. Andy, before joining the RAF, you had a quick spell on Shivering Sands, which housed Radio City. We have seen some pictures before that. Right. It seems that you don't remember too much of that period.
Well, I remember a bit about it. I was about to go into the Royal Air Force, and I think I had 2 weeks before I was to join. And I found myself in Denmark Street in London, which was the centre of the music industry at the time. And there was an office which Radio City was being run from. And I cheekily went in and said, "Are you looking for a disc jockey?" And luckily they were at the time. And I was sent out to the fort, but I knew I could only stay for 2 weeks anyway. But I met Tom Edwards and Ian McRae and Alan Clark and all those people who were on Radio City at the time. The thing I remember most about it was the forts are very big, and you had to be pulled up on a little piece of wood by somebody with a rope like that, which is very dangerous. But apart from that, I don't have too many memories because I was only there for a week. But it was a great experience, and I decided that when I left the Air Force, that's the profession I'd like to go into.
Well, a very young boy.
Very young.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. I was in great demand.
Yeah. So, Andy, when you joined Radio Caroline South on the MV Mi Amigo in 1967, the Marine Offences Act had been coming into force. The station couldn't pay the bills anymore and was playing terrible records by the Major Minor label.
Yeah.
Who were your colleagues then?
Johnny Walker, Robbie Dale, Stevie Merrick, a guy called Henry Morgan, and Bud Ballou. And Bud and I, when I tried to get a job with Radio Caroline in, I think, October 1967, I went to, Ronan had an office in Dean Street in London, which was a company called Mid-Atlantic Films. And I sat there for 3 days waiting to see him. I'd go in the morning and the receptionist said, "Oh, Mr. O'Reilly will see you when he can," and whatever. And at the end of the first day, he hadn't seen me. So she said, "Well, come back tomorrow." So I sat a second day. And then on the third day, Bud Ballou arrived, who was another wannabe disc jockey. And we sat there again most of the day. And then Ronan eventually saw us at about 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And we went into his office. And as luck would have it, they needed 2 disc jockeys for the South Ship. And we were hired on the spot. And for ridiculously low money. I think it was about €30 a week, which wasn't very much in those days. And but we went out and had a great time.
So how long have you been on Caroline then? Until the end in March?
I stayed until March. I was the last program, in fact, because Carl Mitchell was off the ship, and we used to do 2 programs each per day. And I was doing I think it was 3 to 6 in the afternoon, or 12 to 3, I can't remember. And then sitting in for Carl at midnight. And he did midnight till 2. And I did we didn't know it was the last program, but, the next morning we did, but not that night.
So I remember that Cinderella Rockefeller by
that was the last one. To my eternal shame, I will admit to that. That was a dreadful record. Worse than the Plug records.
So I was 14 years old, or young, better young, when I first heard your voice on RNI in February 1970.
Yes.
How come that you got to know those Swiss businessmen, Meister and Bollier?
Well, I had a telephone call from Roger Day's father. And Roger was on the Mebo with a guy called Johnny Scott. I think it was the other English disc jockey at the time. And he needed some more English disc jockeys. And Roger's father rang me and Alan West and Carl Mitchell. And Carl and I had worked with Roger on the Mi Amigo in the late 60s. And Roger's father said, "Can you get over to a place called," and he was Welsh, and he said, "Shimlier." And I said, "Where's Shimlier?" He said, "It's near The Hague." And, so we went over to The Hague and met Bollier and Meister, who were charming. I particularly liked Bollier more than Meister was a bit hard. He was sort of more difficult to communicate with, but Bollier was a lovely man. And we went out the next day, and Johnny, you'll love this, because when we got on board the ship, it was quite luxurious. I mean, unlike the Caroline, I mean, there was beautiful cabins, well furnished and whatever. And when we got on board, they had a steward who took our bags and took them down to the cabin and unpacked. It was like being in a posh hotel. It didn't last very long, but so that was how I got involved.
Okay. So me personally, I was quite disappointed by the limited talent of the German presenters of RNI. On board the Mibo 2, there were Hannibal the Cannibal from Mönchengladbach, not far away from here. Horst Winky Reiner from Austria.
Gosh, he was the campus man I've ever met,
And
I've met a few, I can tell you.
And Axel from South. You have to
Axel,
repeat.
yes.
No, you have to repeat what you said about.
Horst Reiner.
Horst Reiner.
Horst Winky Reiner. Mm-hmm. He used to wear a black fur coat, and he looked a bit like Betty Davis, the American actress. And you had to jump from the tender onto the Mebo. You know, and most would sort of just close your eyes and jump, and one of the crew would catch you. But Horst said, no, nine. And in the end, some big Dutch sailor would get up behind him and go, and he'd go, But he was a great character. We didn't have much to do with, Horst didn't speak any English at all.
No.
Hannibal did. Hannibal spoke
did quite
perfect
well, yeah.
English, and Axel did too. Yes. But we didn't have a lot to do with them, and it was rather mysterious why we had a German service and an English service off the coast of
Holland.
off the coast of Holland. But it didn't last very long, you know. But they were charming as I can remember them.
So
but,
Axel was the third one, and
yes.
The three of them came from three different countries.
Oh, did they?
Yes, Hannibal came from Germany,
Right.
Horst Reiner from Austria,
Yeah.
and Axel from Italy in South Tyrol.
Ah,
So,
I didn't
but
know
you
that.
don't have any contacts with
No,
the
no.
Yes, Hannibal was our guest here some years ago.
Yeah.
But we don't know where Horst Reiner is and where Axel is.
Wow.
Okay,
I can't help you there.
we saw some pictures there.
That's
with Kees
gone
Manders from the Kees Manders attack
Yes.
on the Mebo 2. Can you tell us the real story of the Kees Manders attack?
Well, I don't know the politics behind it, but it was a Saturday morning, and this boat came out with Kees Manders, who we didn't know who he was, but he was a nightclub owner in Amsterdam, I think. Mm-hmm. And according to legend, he'd come to some agreement with Bollier and Meister about renting the ship to them, and Bollier had either reneged on it or didn't like the arrangement, but they tried to take over the ship, and it was all rather dramatic because we were on the air giving a running commentary of what was going on, and I think we were being a little over the top, and over dramatizing it to a certain degree. But
so when you see the pictures, you've got the impression that it was. You told more than it really was.
Yes, I think. We remember we had the advantage. We had the Mebo was quite a high ship, so we were looking down on them. And I think Captain Onus let Manders on board for a talk, but then he went off. We were in no real danger because we had the advantage of looking down on them. Yes. And I remember after they went away, a vessel from the Dutch Navy, I think it was the Van Ness, perhaps, it was a destroyer or a battleship or something. They came to guard the ship overnight, and we went over to see them, and they got us very, very drunk. They had a lot of whiskey and gin and beer and whatever, and we went over and had a very good night on the Van Ness, thanks to the Dutch taxpayer. But that was 1970.
Yes, and 1 year later you rejoined RNI.
I did.
For just a few days.
I did.
And a few weeks later you told the press that the Mebo 2 was a spy ship.
Yeah.
For East European countries.
Right.
And soon we were informed that this was pure nonsense.
Absolutely.
And that you simply wanted to take a revenge on Meister and Bollier. Is that true?
No, not true at all. I liked Edwin Bollier quite a lot, and as a matter of fact, when Radio North Sea closed down in 1974, Edwin Bollier invited me to go on to the last program to read out the list of all of the disc jockeys that appeared on the program. What happened was I got involved with something called the Radio North Sea Drive-In Show, and we were talking about. And I didn't know at the time, but they had nothing to do with Radio North Sea, and we were talking about the ship and whatever, and sort of pontificating about why it had been there in the 1970s when it wasn't making any money and whatever. And somebody suggested it was a spy ship, and I probably said something like, "Oh, that's what we always thought," because Duncan Johnson always said, "I'm sure this is a spy ship," and whatever. And it got out of control, and the next day it was on the front page of the Telegraph, which was the biggest newspaper in Holland. But there was certainly no truth in the rumour, and I don't know why I was fired from North Sea. I think it was something to do with a fellow colleague called Tony who got a bit drunk that night, and I don't think the other English disc jockeys, Crispian St John and Mike Ross, liked Tony Allen and myself. I think they were probably a little bit homophobic, and we were taken off the ship the next day. And Bollier then telephoned me and he said, "I'm so sorry to hear about it." And as I said, he invited me back for the last program. So I don't think there was any animosity between Bollier and myself.
Apropos Mike Ross, what is a toad?
Well, good question. What is German for toad? What's the German word for toad? No. It's like a frog. It's
a frog. Okay.
It's a big frog.
Oh. Eine große Kröte, ja.
In Dutch, it's a kicker, I think. Yeah.
There was this movie that probably wasn't called Toad.
No, that's fake. There wasn't a movie called.
No, we had an advert going at the time, which Ronan O'Reilly was involved in a film called Gold. And the jingle went, "Gold is the movie about the new American dream." And it caused much amusement to Brian Mackenzie and a few of the other people on the Radio North Sea ship. And they had a disc jockey called Mike Ross, who actually looked like a toad. So they started playing this ad, which was Toad
is a movie.
Is a movie about the new and that's how it started. And we had lots of laughs because Radio North Sea would make a Toad promo and play it, and then a few days later we would make another one and respond to it. And it went on for several months. Great fun. A little incestuous perhaps, but it was fun for us.
So when you rejoined Caroline in the autumn of 72, yes, you must have felt like coming home like a lost son or something.
Well, I don't know, because it was a fucking mess. I can tell you, the ship was in a terrible state, and there was no money, and there seemed to be millions of lunatics involved in it, including Ronan at the time, I have to say. And Chris Carey, who was Spangles Muldoon, was working on the Radio North Sea ship at the time, and he left and came over to the Mi Amigo, but it was all a bit of a joke. I mean, you can see pictures of it there. I mean, look, it was an absolute wreck, and nobody really knew what anybody else was doing. I mean, they were raising, I remember they raised some money by going to an Indian restaurant in The Hague and saying, "Can you give us, I don't know, 25 curries?"
Yeah.
Graham will remember these stories, of course. And boxes of fricandel to come out of the ship if we mention your name. What? Samosas and poppadoms and all sorts of things. But they were desperate in those days. And my memories are a bit vague of that 72 period, I have to say.
Mm-hmm. So can we hear track number 3?
What is this?
Witchy woman, we've got guests, so I'm going out on deck. See you later. You're listening to Radio Caroline on 199 meters. Quite some events are happening outside. There's a Dutch naval destroyer, the D814, parked about 200 yards away from us, and also a small launch from this destroyer has come alongside us. We don't know what's happening. It seems to be a slight problem. But we're talking with the crew of the small launch, and standing back away is a ship called the Sea News, along with certain personnel from Radio Carolina. So to our office in Scheveningen, everything is all right at the moment. As soon as we have any news, we'll of course come on and tell you about it. Until then, we go on with some music from the band, and this is a live LP starting off with a number called The Wait. We're having a lot of trouble out here. There's a fight starting on the deck over something, so we may have to go off the air. We'll continue music until then.
So there was a fight going on, and
There was a fight going
a few
on, yeah.
days after Christmas 1970.
It was very frightening, yeah. Yeah. I mean, there were guys with iron bars, and what happened was that the crew of the Mi Amigo hadn't been paid, and there was a captain called Van der Kamp, and he took the crew ashore. No, he stayed on the ship, I'm sorry, and the crew went ashore, and I think, and I have no evidence of this, but I think Radio Veronica would rather see us out of the way, and I think they paid money for them to have the ship towed into Amsterdam,
which happened.
Yeah. Yeah, that was very frightening. The crew came back with iron bars, and Peter Chicago, who was very brave, attacked defended himself, and they were beating him with an iron bar. Yeah, it was very frightening. And these are the pictures you can see of the ship being towed up the North Sea Canal to Amsterdam. We'd lost our mast at the time, I think. There we are, tied up alongside.
Yes. Pictures taken by the late Rob Althoff.
Yeah, he took some very good photographs. Yeah, I remember that the police and the douane, the customs came on board, and that's Gerard Van Dam down there at the at the front. Yeah.
So, what are your memories of Gerard Van Dam and Adrian van Lansrode and Sylvain Tuck? Strange guys from the Netherlands and Belgium.
They were all strange guys in their own way. Gerard was mad. He was, gosh, what an awful picture. Gerard was a serious anorak, and I think he was had ideas above his station. And I mean, I think he was a good guy, and he was very keen on what he wanted to achieve, but he didn't have the knowledge to put a radio station together. Sylvain Tack, he was the owner of the Suzy Waffles company in Belgium. I'm sure a lot of you remember Suzy Waffles. And I always remember Ronan going to his... Ronan was trying to get some money out of Sylvain Tack. He succeeded. He got a lot of money out of him, but... at the time, Ronan was on a macrobiotic diet, and he was taking a lot of pills and only eating sort of seaweed and drinking water and whatever. And he went to Sylvain Tack's factory, which was producing these waffles called Suzy Waffles. And Tack said to him, "Oh, you must try one." And Ronan, who was desperate for money, decided to try one. And he came back to the office, and he said, "Andy, if you'd have been there, you'd have given me an Oscar for my performance." And I said, "What did you do, Ronan?" And he said, "I was given this fucking Suzy waffle." And I took a bite of it, and it was the most terrible thing I've ever eaten in my life. But I had to say to him, "This is delicious. This is wonderful." And he said, I had to finish the whole Suzy waffle. And Tack was beaming. He said, "Oh, Ronan, how wonderful," and whatever. Through Charlotte, because Tack didn't speak English. Yeah. And after that, they used to send boxes and boxes and boxes of Suzy waffles out to the ship. And in the end, we used to feed them to the seagulls. And after a few weeks, even the seagulls would go, "Oh, not fucking Suzy waffles again," and fly off to the Veronica or the North Sea ship. But that's my memory of Sylvain Tack.
You forgot Adrian.
Adrian Van Landskot. I don't remember a lot about him. He was Radio Atlantis, wasn't he? Yes. I didn't see a lot of him. Okay. Yeah, so I can't talk about him. I'm sorry about that. Yeah.
So during these days, a lot of masts were coming down and were erected.
Yeah.
And a new guy came, whose name was Johnny Jason.
Yeah.
Johnny's name at birth was Rüdiger von Etzdorf. And that's the reason why I'm asking the first question in the German language.
Grüß Gott.
Johnny, du bist als Sohn einer englischen Mutter und eines deutschen Vaters in Peru aufgewachsen.
Stimmt.
Gingst dann in England zur Schule,
Ja.
machtest im Schloss Salem am Bodensee das Abitur.
Genau.
Und deine Eltern haben vermutlich erwartet, dass du ein akademisches Studium ergreifen würdest und dürften nicht gerade begeistert gewesen sein, dass du mit einem 2-jährigen Umweg über Australien schließlich auf diesem schrecklichen, rostigen Schiff gelandet bist.
Stimmt.
Jetzt die Antwort auf Deutsch.
Ja, das kann man schon sagen, du. Das stimmt schon. Das kannst du dir das vorstellen. Ja, die hatten eigentlich total was anderes für mich vor. Ich habe also erstmals nach Salem, also ich wusste überhaupt nicht, was ich also tun sollte. Ich hatte also keinen Beruf also im Sinn gehabt. Und dann bin ich also irgendwie, ich habe so lauter so Sachen gemacht in London also als so Arbeiter in so Cafés und so, nicht? Also um nur ein bisschen Geld zu haben. Und dann hat mein Vater, glaube ich, gesagt, also vielleicht ist es besser, wenn du irgendwo zu so einer großen Firma gehst. Und ich bin also dahin gegangen und ich war bei Unilever angestellt, also Marketing-Trainee. Das habe ich aber nur so, 8 Monate lang gemacht und dann dachte ich, nee, das ist also nicht für mich. Und meine Eltern natürlich dachten, naja, der wird ja in so, 25 Jahren Managing Director sein, nicht? Also die hatten das schon, also die haben sich unheimlich gefreut drüber und die waren ja natürlich ganz erstaunt, als ich plötzlich sagte, ich weiß genau jetzt, was ich machen werde. Ich werde nach Australien fliegen. Und zwar war ich damals, also was war das, 71, für 10 Pfund dahin kommen könnte. Nicht? Da wollten die ganzen, also die hatten nicht gewusst, dass die meisten Leute aus England nur nach Australien fliegen oder ankommen, um nach Bondi zu gehen und so auf dem Sand zu liegen. Gell? So ein bisschen schwimmen, also überhaupt nicht arbeiten. Aber ich kam da an und ich habe da habe ich jemanden getroffen, der in Radio gearbeitet hat. Der hat so eine Radio Announcing School, der hieß Max Rowley, der war ein ganz toller Ansprecher, also bei Channel 7 in Sydney, in TV. Und da bin ich also dabei gewesen, einmal in der Woche. Und dann nach einiger Zeit haben wir so Tapes gemacht und die hingeschickt, also verschiedene Stationen da in Australien. Und da habe ich glücklicherweise so einen Job bekommen, also in Queensland, vor MK Mackay. Das war tropische, also ganz tolles Wetter und so weiter und das war ganz super. Und danach, also nach einem Jahr bin ich dann zu Foreign LM Mount Isa, das war also noch eine Station, aber in der Mitte von Queensland, also unheimlich heiß, aber trockene Hitze. Und nach 2 Jahren bin ich wieder nach England gekommen, weil ich wusste, dass 73 ungefähr fingen die Commercial Radio Stations an, gell? Und da wollte ich, da wollte ich also dabei sein und ich habe also versucht da anzukommen bei Capital Radio. Da war damals Dave Cash, Kenny Everett, also die waren unheimlich berühmte Leute und da bin ich natürlich überhaupt nicht dran gekommen. Ich hatte auch wahnsinnig australischen Akzent. Und und dann nachher habe ich gefunden, dass jemand mir gesagt hat, also Johnny, vielleicht Caroline ist wieder da, versuch das doch mal. Und da bin ich da angekommen.
Being 25 years young, you jumped on board the MV Me Amigo for the first time in June 73. What did you expect and what did you see in reality?
Well, yes, I know what you're referring. Well, I don't think I've been told too much about it. I'd heard about Caroline in the 60s, you know, and I knew it was something really special. But when I actually arrived out there, and I hadn't been told too much about the actual sort of state of the ship and so on, And we arrived on this, I can't even remember, some little tender, it must have been from somewhere. And the first person I think I bumped into was this guy in very greasy overalls with very long hair. And no, it wasn't Andy. It was Dick Palmer, the captain.
The captain.
And he was amazing. He said, "I'm Dick Palmer, I'm the captain." I went, "What? Captain of the ship?" You know, looking like that. And anyway, but Dick, as you know, turned out to be a really amazing. He was a very funny guy, and he ended up having a really amazing program called the Dick Palmer's Night Trip, which is one of Andy and I's favourite programs. Because as the name implies, maybe, it was a bit of a trip in there with Dick, who used to sit there in this little Caroline studio with Andy and myself and various other people, all crowded in with him, and with his turntables on either side, you know, and he'd be, you know, he'd somehow, we'd get going, and after a while he'd say, "What can I say about this?" Oh no, he used to open the mic, didn't he? He used to say, "You've got to help me, I don't know what I'm going to do next." And then we'd say, "Dick, the record's just about to finish." And he'd say, and then he'd open the mic and he'd say, "What can I say about this that wasn't said in the music?" which is a brilliant answer, actually. And we always used to think it was very funny. And he took it very well, didn't he? I think, you know, he did take it well. And so that was my first impression of the ship, really. Yeah.
So there were guys from the US, from New Zealand, from Australia. I've got names here like Paul Alexander, Samantha Dubois, Graham Gill, Mickey Mercer, Mike the Poet, Steve England, Mike Hagler, Brian Anderson, Bob Noakes, Rob Eden, Norman Barrington, Clive Correll, Peter Chicago, and Andy Archer.
And most importantly, Andy.
Yeah.
Yes, we had a fantastic team, and I think really, well, for me, I was only there for 2 years, unlike Andy, who did the real, you know, he's the real campaigner here, but those 2 years are really incredible because we had a really good lineup of people. We weren't always on there at the same time, but it was a really good mix.
Caroline family.
Yeah, the Caroline family.
And you were free to play what you want?
Very much so. I mean, I remember when we had the pop service, where was that? That was before we got into the sort of albums thing, wasn't it? 73. I don't think we did have so much freedom. No. That was more the pop music, you know, your Stevie Wonders and stuff. Not that we didn't play Stevie otherwise, but the time I remember most is when we used to go down to the record library, go down, you can imagine a whole line of albums looking at you. You say, right, now what do I fancy tonight? Bit of Pink Floyd, definitely. Bit of Jimi Hendrix, yes. Marvin Gaye, yes. You know, and so on. And you ended up having this, as Andy mentioned with Graham, a whole stack of records. And you'd turn up at the studio and just decide, you know, how to play them as the mood took you. That's what I did anyway. It was great fun because you could build it yourself as you went along.
So let's hear track number 6.
Rather a nice way to start off a Tuesday evening, don't you think? And it's a good way to say, well, good evening, and I'm very pleased to be back indeed, because as you probably know, Andy's already been saying it, and I've got to thank everybody on the station already at Caroline for sort of keeping the seat warm for me while I've been sort of spending more time than I intended in the US of A. Anyway, that's a good sign. It comes from the LP, which is one of the best ones to come out of the US of A at the moment. It's called MFSB, or Mother, Father, Sister, Brother, which is rather a good sort of thing, all about love. Love is the message. That's the title of the LP. And it's TSOP, and in fact, if you don't know about the Sound of Philadelphia, as they're known, they're a bunch of session musos out of Philadelphia, and they perform all sorts of backing tracks for people like Billy Paul and the OJs, so they must be pretty good. So if you like that, why don't you get the LP? It's called MFSB, or Mother, Father, Sister, Brother, quite easy to remember, and the name of the LP, Love is the Message. Good things happening on Radio Caroline here tonight, as every night. Johnny Jason here till 1 o'clock. At 1 o'clock, Rob Eden rocks in, and at 3, our good friend Mickey Mercer. That's the lineup. Here are the Doobies.
So Andy keeps on telling that you brought the Doobies to Europe.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Well, it is. Well, I don't know. I don't know whether I can really claim credit for it, but it's a sort of thing that's been said over the years. But the fact is, I did go over to America at that stage, and my brother used to work in New York, and so I heard about these guys, the Doobies, and I had I think the latest or the first Doobies album with me, and a Steely Dan album, and I came back and went on board with them, and everyone thought they were great. So we played them an awful lot, and as a result of us playing them, well, we think we broke them in Europe, but we don't know. I really don't know if that's true. It's a good story, though.
So, Andy, which music did you prefer, especially on Seagull?
I always was a fan of Pink Floyd, but we had two disc jockeys who joined us called Hugh Nolan and Barry Everett. And they had a great knowledge of music and I was only really interested in the sort of run-of-the-mill rock tracks, but they introduced us to all sorts of things, and Frank Zappa and Captain Beefheart and all of those bands, which I haven't paid much attention to. And so Barry and Hugh has sadly died. He died a couple of years ago, but they were our great educators when it came to music.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's hear track number 5, a very special one.
Hector the dope sniffing hound used to be seen around town with inspectors and pigs. He was one of the bigs. A bark from that narc sent you down. One night they were casing a joint. On point duty Hector did point at the small herbal fag. Then he took a sly drag, saying pow wow. Wow. What's the point? Hector the dope sniffing hound. Now Margot Carter flies and flies, it flies.
That was one that Barry and Hugh introduced us to. It was back in those days, smoking a joint. It's not like today. Which is very strong stuff. The stuff we smoked was very sort of mild and inoffensive almost, but just made us giggle. But that was a song that sort of summed up the situation on the Mi Amigo at the time. Yeah. Not everybody smoked it. So Graham never inhaled.
So, in contrary, you even became program controller on Radio Mi Amigo.
Only for the beginning. That was part of Ronan's blag to get money out of Sylvan Tack, and I had to go down to Bousingen in Belgium to. We made some jingles down there. Steve England was down there, who was very good at making jingles, and we just picked a team of disc jockeys. I think we had Bert Bennett and Joop Verhoof, Peter van Dam, and Wil van der Steen, and later we had a few other people whose names I can't remember, but that was then.
Okay. You seem to have got a lot of Belgian and Dutch friends during that time. That means several DJs and crew members as well. Let's listen to track number 4, which is from Christmas.
Good morning from everybody on the Mi Amigo. It's 12 o'clock and this is a live broadcast. Right, and a very good morning to you, or good afternoon, wherever you're listening. This is Andy Archer on the Mi Amigo, along with all my friends and colleagues of the crew and all our technicians as well. A live program in which we all say hello to our families and friends, and we have the Dutch crew in with us. Captain, are you going to open this bottle of champagne? This is a bit like a jingle, isn't it? Because on the hour, every hour, we open up a bottle of champagne. You have to... I know you've got a sore throat, but it shouldn't affect you pushing that up. There you go. Wait a minute, here we go. Right, there we go.
What do you want to come out, Andy?
Good health to you. Ready? Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers. Cheers.
Lovely.
Lovely. Well, as I said, it's Christmas Day, so very good morning to you. The weather's very nice outside. The sun's shining, so I hope it is where you are too. As we drink our champagne, we'll play our first record and then come in with one of the crew afterwards. And this is George Harrison with Give Me Love and Give Me Peace on Earth. A very nice sentiment at this time of the year. Just seen Yart come in. I must be honest, we all slept out this morning. stayed a few extra hours in bed.
I don't remember champagne on the Mi Amigo.
I wondered.
Well, we wouldn't lie.
Du meinst das jetzige Mi Amigo? Ja. Das ist mehr eine Reminiszenz. Also sie erinnern sich an die schönen Zeiten, nicht? Aber es hat eigentlich direkt mit dem Alten nichts mehr so zu tun.
Und dann gibt es jetzt bei Radio Caroline, außer Radio Caroline selbst, gibt es jetzt noch diese Oldies, Tod 1.5 gibt es da noch, ja? Und dann gibt es noch einen anderen Stream, die halt auch diese ganze Oldies noch spielen, auch von Mi Amigo. Das Ableger von Radio Caroline oder machen die ihr eigenes Ding?
Ich weiß jetzt nicht ganz genau. Ich weiß jetzt nicht ganz genau, was du meinst. Jedenfalls ist. Ja, das ist, glaube ich, nicht das von Peter Moore, sondern ein nachgemachtes Radio Caroline, was keine direkten Zusammenhänge mit dem alten Caroline hat. Ich würde euch bitten, die Fragen vielleicht noch 10 Minuten, 20 Minuten zurückzustellen und die bündeln wir dann und machen die dann auch über ein Mikrofon. Dann kriegen wir es nachher besser auch mit der Aufzeichnung hin. During your programs, you constantly mentioned Buster Pearson, who obviously was the mega anorak.
Yeah.
Did you ever meet him?
Oh, I knew Buster very well.
Right.
He was a paraplegic, and he didn't have much going in his life apart from pirate radio, and he had a. Well, you went there.
Meticulously kept books of everything you've done, and he listened to everything. And he's a very charming guy.
Yeah, I remember taking Ronan to see him once, and he couldn't believe it when Ronan walked into his bungalow, which he was living with his mother and aunt at the time. But he was a charming man and a great character, and very intelligent man too.
So let's hear track number 9, and you listen carefully.
I will.
The Eagles from their first album, and that was called Witchy Woman. I think there will be quite a few tracks by the Eagles played tonight on various programs, because we saw a 20-minute special on the Eagles a few moments ago on television. I must say they were very fine. Anyway, I did play a message for Buster at 8 o'clock, but I understand not all of it went out. So Buster, if you're standing by with the tape recorder, here we go again.
Hello, Buster. Bob Noakes has told us that he's involved with Chris Carey, Chicago and Dick Palmer to attempt to take over these ships tomorrow. The idea is to come out early in the morning on one of Froelic's boats before our own tenders do.
And now track number 10.
Hello, Buster. Bob Noakes has told us that he's involved with Chris Carey, Chicago and Dick Palmer to attempt to take over these ships tomorrow. The idea is to come out early in the morning on one of Froelic's boats before our own tender is due. There's only one good thing in our favour, and that's the weather's quite bad at the moment. You know Ronan's number, so try and contact him and give him that message. And if he's not there, try Rotterdam. And if there's no reply from there, Amsterdam 252921. Should any other listener decipher this tape, please be discreet and telephone Buster at South Benfleet 2285. The code is 03745. South Benfleet 2285. The code is 03745, and I ask you in the name of Caroline to be very discreet. Thank you.
What is this?
Well, one evening Michael Hagler came up to me and he said, I've just been talking to Bob Noakes, who was one of the engineers on the ship, and he said that evening or the following day, I can't remember, that there was going to be a takeover of the Radio Caroline ship by various people. And Mike said to me, what do you feel about it? And I said, well, I'm like you, a Ronan man. I think we should tell Ronan. And we decided to go to Captain Meyer, and we sat in his cabin and explained the situation as we knew it. And Captain Meyer said, well, I won't let anybody on board the ship. And the problem was Bob Noakes, who was involved in taking over the ship, had disconnected the ship-to-shore radio, so we couldn't get a message to Charlotte Ribblink, who ran the station on land. And we thought about it for a while, how to do it without making it that obvious, rather than saying, come and help us. And we knew that Buster listened to everything we did. So we decided in the end to record that message and play it at double speed, thinking that most people probably wouldn't record it anyway, which you did. But,
no, it's not my record. Yeah.
And Buster did get the message and then played it back at half speed and got in touch with Ronan, and Ronan got in touch with Koos van Duin and Lonus Trust, who were running the shore operation, and they sent out a little boat with some... You were on land at the time, weren't you? And they sent out a boat with one or two guys who knew how to look after themselves, if you know what I mean.
Okay.
And that was the end of that. Mm-hmm. And the next day we put Noakes onto a boat and said, don't come back. And that was the end of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Another track, number 7, please.
Steely Dan and Do It Again. The band will be featuring this coming Wednesday night on our Wednesday night school special between 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock. Steely Dan this coming Wednesday. Johnny's with me, sorting out a few records behind there.
Hello, sir.
Hello. All right?
Very well.
A very relaxing day, isn't it?
Yes, very nice programme as well.
Thanks very much. Highly honoured, as Graham Kay would say.
Yes.
We had a bit of fun this afternoon, to let a bit of steam off. We decided to take on the crew in a battle. There's not much LA there, I'm afraid, but it was all done very friendly with eggs and things like that.
Yes, rotten ones, of course.
Actually, I don't know who came off best. I suppose it was about equal, really, wasn't it? We all got soaked.
And you had to change twice.
Yes, I got down to my last pair of trousers this afternoon. I shoved one pair on and came out and got soaked. Went back in and changed them. About 10 minutes later, they got soaked. And that was it. I stayed out of the fun after that. It was a case of having to, or walking around in my undies all night.
It all came to a rapid close once we sort of run out of things to wear, I think.
I think it came to a rapid close after we ran out of eggs. Right, I've got time for 2 more records, and this will be one of them from Frank Zappa.
So you obviously liked playing practical jobs.
Oh, yes.
Do you remember any other practical...
Well, I remember, if the weather was nice and somebody was walking along the deck and you happened to have an egg in your hand, you might throw it and hope it hit them. And then it would start into a major fight, usually the Dutch versus the English. And it was great. I mean, it was all done in great fun, but you'd walk into your cabin and somebody had put a tin of water on the door. So when you opened the door, it would cover you in... Yes. Or there was a Dutch pudding, which you'll know, very called vla.
Vla. Mm-hmm.
And the Dutch crew used to pour lots of vla into plastic containers and throw it at us. And if it hit you, I mean, you were covered in this custard. It was terrible. You had to get your enemy to lick it off, so to speak.
So in August 1974, I recorded your message to Mynheer van Doren, who was the minister responsible for the Dutch law against the offshore station. Can we listen to track number 10?
So, thank you very much indeed, Peter van Dam, also Arne Peterson, Phil van der Steen, Frans van der Drift, Heike de Bois, Bert Bennett, Joop Verhoef, Mike Morgan, Norbert and Paul Sabers. Thank you very much indeed. Live and direct from the North Sea. This is Radio Caroline on 259, 1187 kilohertz. And before we go on, ik heb een boodschap voor meneer Van Doren. 2 boodschappen. De eerste is Caroline blijft in de lucht. And the tweede is LA.
My Dutch accent was terrible.
So can you explain what that meant?
It was Van Doren was the Dutch government minister who was trying to close the pirate stations at the time, and he succeeded. I mean, I remember we went to the Tweede Kamer in The Hague with Ronan and all sorts of people. Yes, yeah. But to no avail. I mean, they decided that was it, and it was probably right, actually.
So that was a recording from August 26th, only 5 days before the RNI and Radio Veronica had to close down.
Yes, yeah.
So you knew that
we knew we were going to
was
stay.
Was going on.
Yeah,
and that.
Yeah, we knew a few days beforehand.
Yes.
They came out. Sylvan Tack and Ronan came out and said, "We're going to stay on the air and probably go over to the English coast."
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Johnny, Andy, and you both seem to be the only Caroline jocks staying with Caroline after August 31st. Andy just for a few months, but you stayed until 1977.
Is that right?
Yes.
Crikey. Yes. I don't remember. Really? Really? Yeah. Crikey, how silly.
So something must have changed. But for example, the tender trips from which weren't coming from Holland anymore.
Well, is this the bit where we got picked up?
Yes,
yeah. Well, I can. Yes. I mean, we'd been out. I can't remember exactly when it was, but we'd been out on ship for a long time. Usually we stayed on there, 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. That's how it started. Then it went to 3 weeks on, 3 weeks off, 4 weeks on, 4 weeks off, and then it sort of ad infinitum depending on the weather. And then one particular time, we'd been out there for a long time. Must have been 8 weeks, 6 weeks, and we were getting absolutely desperate. And we spend our time because by that time we'd run very low on food. I think we used to at times fish over the side for mackerel. I've never liked mackerel since because we ran out of proper food, And anyway, we saw this boat come out and anchored just a little bit off the ship, and they were waving to us, and we were going, hello, hello. We thought they were fans, just come out to see the boat. Little did we know that they were taking photographs of us. Well, we didn't think anything more of it. A little boat came to take us off the boat. We got in the boat. There was you, Jesse Mayer, myself, and Graham, was it? No, not Graham. One of the crew. Anyway, the guy said, don't worry, lads, we're heading back to England. It won't take long to get there. So we sort of headed off in the motorboat, and we spotted some other ship coming in the opposite direction, which looked a bit like a sort of frigate, some sort of, maritime, a minesweeper. And we thought, crikey, we better keep an eye on this and see what sort of boat it was. Anyway, it went past us, and we saw it turn round and suddenly start chasing us. And the guy said in the boat, don't worry, lads, we're nearly there. Open the throttles. We shot off like in this speedboat. And we were heavily sort of thinking, crikey, it must be the police. And we were dumping everything over the side, all our pills and various things that we had on board, to keep going. And anyway, we eventually, a launch came and crossed our bows, and onto the boat jumped these immaculately dressed Essex Coast Guard. And they say, you're nicked, we've got you, And they say, I'm terribly sorry about this, they used to say. We actually listen to the station, we love you really, but we've got to we're going to charge you for being a British subject on the radio station. And we were all taken, well, we weren't taken away, we were. The guy said, we'll come and visit you, we'll come and charge you later. So anyway, we went back to our respective homes, and eventually they said, well, how are you going to plead to this? And they came around, I think they probably came to you, Andy. They certainly came to my parents' home in London. And, they were quite shocked by this. They didn't realise, this sounded quite serious, what was going to happen as a result of being caught. And anyway, I decided to plead not guilty, which was a bit of a silly thing to do, a very risky thing, because no one had been actually charged under the Marine Offences Act yet. And because Ronan said to me, Johnny, if you plead not guilty, I will make sure you get the best barrister money can buy. And so I said, all right then, Ronan, I'll do it. I must have been very stupid.
So he kept his word.
He kept his word. And
didn't pay him.
No, he didn't, well, he may not have paid him, but yeah. When we got down to the court, I think Andy and John very sensibly pleaded guilty and they were fined. They paid a certain fine. And with me, he said, right, the case is going to be transferred to the Crown Court in Southend. And so the day came, I can't remember when it was now, and we went there. And in the meantime, Ronan had organised this guy called James Cumming, who was a very well-known barrister who operated at the Old Bailey in London, which is like the highest court in the country. And so he came down, and when he actually spoke, he was defending me, he got up, and the way he spoke was just so eloquent. And, we found out as well that he seemed to have more experience than the judge. So we were in a good position. And in the meantime, I'd been taken down to the cells, and I had to walk up and stand in front, in between these policemen. And then it was quite quite frightening to be in this court, you know, and I was suddenly thinking, well, what have I done here? This is ridiculous. What am I doing? This is, you know, anything could happen. I could go to prison. So you can imagine my parents were not very pleased. They thought I was completely mad. Anyway, to cut a long story short, the case got thrown out because of a lack of evidence. Our man was just so good at tearing the police evidence to shreds. He got them in the witness box and, you know, decided. We got off on a technicality in that what had happened was that we were being charged as being British subjects on a pirate station, but our defence was that yes, we were there, but we also used to have storm tapes, because when the weather was very rough and the ship was rocking a lot, we couldn't play the record, so we used to have tapes. And this is really what it got, that's how we got off it. And the judge said to the foreman of the jury, I direct you to find this man not guilty. And the guy said, yes, not guilty. And the judge said to Mr. Cumming, Mr. Cumming, you've driven a coach and horses through this act, which is a very extravagant way of saying that he'd done a brilliant job. And then he said, yes, I direct to find you not guilty. And then he said to me, young man, which I was then, you've cocked a snook at society. Again, a strange way of saying I've been very cheeky. And he said, you've cocked a snook at society and got away with it. Consider yourself lucky. And at the time, all the Caroline fans in the crowd went in the court, hey! I was a hero for the day.
Right.
You've been a hero forever, Johnny.
So, another question. That was the time that Radio Mi Amigo had to produce their programs in Spain. Is it true? I have read that they were even delivered by plane.
They were delivered by plane, yes, I know what you're getting at, I think. Because we did have, I remember, a particularly specific time, I think it was Chicago, who set off in a rubber dinghy to pick up these tapes that had come down. Well, they weren't on parachutes, were they? Or just chucked in this... They were just chucked down from this low-flying plane, you know. They could have been stashed full of drugs or whatever. Oh, yeah. They probably were sometimes. Anyway, Chicago set off with in this little, I think in this inflatable with a bit of an outboard motor. I think we had a little bit of motor, didn't he? Did we, Andy? Yeah. Anyway, so he went out. We all gathered on the back of the ship watching him go and pick this stuff up. And then when he came back, he handed over the tapes and handed over I think he handed over the motor as well, and anyway, the long and the short of it was he ended up drifting away with no paddles, and he was drifting along, you know, just off the back of the boat. You know, we were all going, "See you, mate." Yeah, no, I can't remember how he got back. Was he picked up?
I think so.
Yeah, he was picked up. Yeah.
And what do you guess? Who has done more hours on Caroline, Johnny or Andy?
Oh, it must be Andy. He was there a lot longer than me.
Oh. Andy did 744.
What?
Yes, and you did 1275.
No.
These are Buster's records.
My goodness me.
But you know that Buster has written down everything.
Buster's word was Bible.
And only 5 jocks. Yeah. Only 5 jocks did even more programs. That were Stuart Russell on Nigel Harris.
All right.
Mark Lawrence, James Ross, Roger Matthews, and Tony Allen.
All right. Is Tony the top?
No.
No.
Stuart Russell.
Stuart Russell. All right. Well, there you go.
So, and the loving awareness concept.
Yes.
A lot of rubbish, or at least any truth in it.
Well, I have to say, I mean, you know, yeah. Well, that's a difficult one, Martin. Because if I say it was a lot of rubbish, I would have been totally false in going on air and talking about it. But I mean, I have to say I found it very difficult to, not so much the feeling about the you know, what it was meant to signify, but having to go on, and I really couldn't get into it too much. I don't know about Andy. Mm-hmm.
But you got to know...
echo those words.
But you got to know the guys of the Loving Awareness band. Oh, no. Do you think they were overestimated by Ronan, as he said, they were the new Beatles?
Well, they certainly sounded very, very Beatlish, the album they made, but I have to say I'm a little bit biased in their favour because I got to know them very well after that. And in fact, when I at one stage was trying to make a record with some friends of mine, and I'd been left a little money, so I put some money into it, which was probably not a good thing to do. I needed someone to do the bass and drums, and I because I knew these guys, I got Norman Watroy on bass and Charlie Charles on drums, and they ended up being part of the Blockheads with the Enduries, so one of the best bands in the country. Nothing to do with me, but I was just very, very pleased that I'd used them, so that was marvellous. Yeah, but the actual Loving Awareness, no, I think he probably, Roland did overhype it, yes, very much so. Difficult to beat the Beatles.
So in 75 you came out as number 7 in the Melody Maker poll. So the best, number 7 of the best DJs in Britain.
Should have been number 1.
Yeah.
I was
Absolutely.
I was very, very pleased, and I was quite surprised by that. I mean, really surprised, because I was up against sort of, some really big names. It just shows you the power of Caroline that we had then, because we must have had loads of people writing in on our behalf. I don't think I was the only Caroline guy, was I? In the poll?
The only, yes.
Oh, I was the only one. Oh, well. I know Tony Allen, Andy, and everyone else in other years have also been voted in, so I was very honoured by that, yes. And I thought, this is it. I've made it. I'm going to be having Radio 1 on the phone. They didn't phone. Never mind.
A few years later, I wrote in Monitor magazine in 1981, you had serious plans to join Caroline again on the so-called MV Imagine, which was the Ross Revenge, to work along with people like Wolfman Jack and Johnny Walker, who seem to be your idol. Is that true?
Well, no, I don't know about that. Actually, I don't remember Wolfman Jack being mentioned then, but it is a little bit... I was at Radio City then in Liverpool, where I'd spent 4 years, and I do remember sort of the talk about it going back, maybe. Johnny Walker, he was certainly someone I respected, yeah. I'm not sure about him being my idol, but he was certainly someone I rated very highly. And I thought, well, if Johnny Walker's going back, maybe I'll go as well. But it didn't come to anything.
And may I ask the both of you to say something on Ronan? What character is Ronan?
Ronan was a very charming con man, is how I would say. I mean, he was a very, very nice guy. I loved him a lot, and the way he did things and the way he talked with you and so on. He could get you to do anything for very little money, and he did.
Andy.
I think I'd sum Ronan up very Irish, very Catholic, and very cunning.
Catholic.
Oh, yes. And I don't know what the German for cunning is.
Cunning.
Devious. Shrewd.
Yeah. Okay. As far as I know, you are the only DJ to have worked offshore in the 60s, 70s, and 80s.
Yeah.
What was your impression of the all-new Radio Caroline?
Wow.
Your impression of the all-new Caroline from the Ross Revenge in August 83?
I tell you why I joined Caroline again. I was just getting fed up with the restrictions imposed by the commercial radio stations. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't young, but I was moderately young. And I thought I'd give it one more go. And it was a bit of a mistake. I mean, I enjoyed it. Was nice to go, but I got arrested again. Which didn't look. I'm a criminal, and fined. I forget how much it was now, but so I've sort of wiped that period away from me. I remember Tom Anderson, and I remember Dixie Peach, and that's really about it. Mm-hmm. I don't remember anything about the programs, and
it was quite boring. It was just playing LPs and
very boring.
Yes.
There wasn't much repartee between the. I mean, on the Mi Amigo, we used to have a lot. If somebody walked into the studio, you could have a big laugh, but it wasn't like that again. So it was a mistake on my part.
So but more restricted.
But I'm glad I did it. But yeah.
Mhm. And if you compare those three ships, the MV Mi Amigo, the Mibo 2, and the Ross Revenge.
Oh, the Mi Amigo had the most character, and the Mibo was the most luxurious, but it was a terrible ship in bad. I mean, Mark Van Amstel will agree with me. I don't. He's got. I thought he found us boring and fallen asleep. The Mibo in bad weather was a terrible ship. Yeah, it used to roll all over the place. But but when the weather was calm, the Mibo was a beautiful ship. Yes.
The Mibo 2 was a very bad ship with Gale Force 6.
Oh yes, yeah.
When it's higher, it was really a good ship to be on.
But frightening.
But no, not on a higher level.
Yeah.
I've been there
right.
at Gale Force 12 without any problem. But the Mi Amigo was the best ship ever made as a sailing ship.
Yeah.
And just always with the head on the waves. So within a couple of minutes it lay steady. And the Mibo 2 was rolling about 3/4 of an hour when the tide shifted.
The Veronica was a good ship too in bad weather, I thought.
So and the Ross Revenge didn't make that much impression on you.
I wasn't out there in the bad weather. It was quite calm the few months I was out there.
Ferry, if you compare those.
Ross Revenge was rather steady. It was a rather good ship.
Yeah.
I've actually been sailing the Ross Revenge in the storm when the anchor broke. But it was a very good ship. I think the best one I've been on.
Compared better than the Mi Amigo. Okay. Okay. So, last question. Why do you think are we sitting here still reminiscing about a radio station that was broadcasting 40 years ago?
Good question.
Both.
Johnny?
Well, I think really when you think about the sort of things we did, the music we played, the influence we had, the people on board, that just could not be matched by anything else. And I certainly agree with Andy that after coming off Caroline, despite all the radio stations I went to, and I went to a lot of them, nothing compared to Caroline at all.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. And also you were sort of part of this too, because we had wonderful listeners, and still after all of these years, you're still very interested in it. And, it was unique. And, I for one, I know Johnny too, glad to be a part of it, however small. But it was great fun. And may we thank you as well, Martin, for some really interesting and questions.
Thank you very much. I giving you a DVD with 130 hours of JJ and Andy.
Oh gosh!
And all pictures we've seen.
Fantastic! Yeah. Can I just say a word about a dear colleague of ours? I was talking with Ferry Aiden earlier, and Ferry was talking about Ad Roberts, who's not in a very good way. He's had his, maybe you could translate this into German later. Yes. He's had part of his leg amputated, and I think Ferry goes to see him quite often.
Ferry, he knows more than water.
And I think it'd be rather nice if we had a little collection of just a few euros, which Ferry could give to him, so he can treat himself to something special. Maybe you'd like to...
Absolutely. Apropos, dazu möchte ich gerne auch noch einen Kommentar geben. Andy hat jetzt gerade was erzählt über Ad Roberts. Der ist ja auch hier schon mehrfach unser Gast gewesen. Und Ad geht es gesundheitlich und auch finanziell nicht so gut. Er hatte eine kleine Amputation, oder ich weiß nicht, wie groß die Amputation hat. Doch, Unterschenkelamputation. Und Andy schlägt vor, dass wir einen kleinen Solidaritätsbeitrag liefern für Ad. Wenn wer das möchte, kann das gerne tun. Aber zum Stichwort Geld muss ich ausdrücklich nochmal sagen, es haben leider nicht alle heute bezahlt. Und Jan hat vorhin verzweifelt darum gebeten, dass doch bitteschön jeder sich vorne einmal anmeldet und auch die Unkosten bezahlt. Denn es muss hier tatsächlich auch eine Miete für diesen Raum und überhaupt für die Benutzung der Sternwarte aufgebracht werden. Und deswegen sollte jeder so ehrlich sein und sich eben vorne noch melden. Ich hatte vorhin versprochen, dass wir auch noch ein paar Fragen stellen können, dass ihr noch ein paar Fragen stellen könnt aus dem Publikum. Dazu würden wir dann gerne das Mikrofon einmal rumreichen, damit das Ganze auch dann aufgenommen werden kann auf Tape. Wer möchte noch eine Frage loswerden? Könnt ihr das vielleicht einmal?
Ja, es gibt ja einmal hier Radio Caroline. Das ist ja der Livestream jetzt. Und den kann man ja gut empfangen. Und dann gibt es ja auch Caroline 295. Die bringen praktisch teils, also nur Oldies, aber dann auch von Mi Amigo, glaube ich sogar. Und dann hier 263, also es gibt zwei so eine extra Streams. Und du hätte ich gern mal gewusst, ob die alle mit zusammengehören.
Also ich weiß, ich sag das einfach mal so, ich weiß, dass Caroline also Nonstop Oldies Stream irgendwie eingerichtet hat. Das ist die gleiche Organisation und das läuft nur so nebenbei.
Das ist aber Flashback Caroline und das ist direkt von Caroline.
Das ist direkt von Caroline.
Die anderen sind alles eigenständige Sender.
Da gibt es noch mehrere andere, die also eigene.
Also es gibt das Radio Caroline von Peter Moore, das sich versteht als Fortführung des alten Caroline und somit offiziell ist. Und dann als Ableger noch Caroline Flashback, da ist auch Roger Twiggy Day zu hören, der eben immer noch seine Sendung macht. Und alles andere, das sind selbsternannte Ableger, die eigentlich mit dem Original nun gar nichts mehr zu tun haben. Nächste Frage. Helmut. Ich komme mal nach
vorne. Also erstmal zu den Zusatzangeboten. An diesem Wochenende sendet Caroline von der Ross Revenge über Manx Radio. Das geht von heute Morgen, ich glaube um 11:30 oder wann fing das an und geht bis morgen Abend 9 Uhr. Sowohl auf Mittelwelle auf der Isle of Man 1368 Kilohertz. Ja, und auf Caroline natürlich auch zu hören. Manx Radio natürlich auch im Internet. Die haben ja einen FM und einen AM-Service. Und auf AM läuft also dann das Caroline-Programm an diesem Wochenende. But what I really wanted to say is not so much a question, but a remark. Andy, you mentioned that the decision to stay on the air after 31st of August 1974 was taken, well, let's say in time, which is a little surprising to me. Up till now, I always thought that the decision was taken rather late, because at least in the first week of September 74, Radio Mi Amigo didn't have program tapes. For a whole week, they played the same tapes every day. That's why I so far thought that the decision was taken rather late to stay on the air.
Well, Helmut, I can't answer that specifically. I know we were told a few days before. I remember Sylvan Tack and Ronan coming out to the ship, but I don't know the problems behind recording it, or was aware of those playing the tapes, but we knew about 4 or 5 days, I suppose. But it's a long time ago. I can't remember. But were they? Oh, that's your answer, Helmut. They were confiscated. Yeah, yeah.
Another question. Helmut, kannst du das nochmal eben?
Can I just say, just before the question comes in, how nice it is to see our old friend Graham Gill again, and yeah. The last time we saw Graham, he'd just come out of hospital, and nice to see you back to your old form, Graham. And I'm glad you enjoyed the curry wurst.
So, ich möchte Sie nicht mit meinem unmöglichen Englisch blamieren, deshalb frage ich gleich mal in Deutsch. Die Zeit auf der Mi Amigo und die Zusammenarbeit mit Dennis King, kannst du dazu etwas sagen, Dennis King?
No, Dennis was one of the great characters who worked for Radio Caroline, a German guy, and he was maybe you have to explain this in German. He was a very good blagger. If you needed anything, Dennis would get it.
Er war ein Organisationstalent und ja, ich sag mal vielleicht ganz vorsichtig, er hielt es auch dann immer nicht so ganz mit der Wahrheit und so und hat es irgendwie immer geschafft, ne? So kann man sagen, ne?
Hat sich wahrscheinlich nicht viel geändert. Ja. Aber mehr sage ich nicht.
Aber ein klasse Kerl.
Wo? Ja. Ist er heute noch? Ist er heute noch?
Ja.
Erstmal ein ganz großer Freund von mir und ich habe dann die Bilder gesehen. Es gab ja wohl Fotos auf der Mi Amigo, so in so einem kleinen Rondell haben sie dann die jungen Herren, jetzt erst noch mit schön langen Haaren, ja, kleine, schmächtige Jungs da war er noch klein und schmächtig. Ja. Jetzt ist er nur etwas in die Breite gegangen, ja.
So, I remember that Dennis King told a story that a new mast for the MV Mi Amigo was flown by plane under the radar to the Mi Amigo. Is that true? Under the radar.
Never let the truth stand in the way of a good story. I knew Dennis was crazy, but I mean that's a new one on me.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Jetzt kommt Jan noch.
This will be technical.
No, not really. But Dennis King was really good in organizing. As in the Funkausstellung Berlin in September 1975, there was a meeting of the free radio people, and it was called Caroline Reunion, and he really organized it in a room in the Kempinski Hotel in Berlin. He must have sold several spots to Kempinski Hotel in the Berlin service probably, but we freaky people went into the Kempinski to the shock of certain people sitting on the bar, etc. That was a very nice evening, but what he did, he shocked some of our people because he was speaking plain truth. You know, there are the hippies on the ship, there are the hippies on the radio at home, and he was speaking plain true that Caroline is a commercial radio station. It works for the money. It has a playlist, and he showed the rate card, etc. And so for some of us, it opened the eyes, but something that you should have realized all the time. But all the definition of free radio was always different. We in Germany, for example, free radio, I think with free and independent, sovereign radio, we interpret. Free radio for England, I always understood as free of cost to the customer. Yeah. So that is these were the different interpretation, and in that way, Dennis King opened some people the eyes, and he showed such a Radio Caroline rate card with coverage 24 million people all over Europe, whatever. So, and exactly such documents like these rate cards, that would be nice to have for the Essen exhibition, that to copy and show what are the coverage and what did these stations do to the public in the Essen museum, what I mentioned earlier today. But the main question I also have to you, Andy, I know especially that you have frequent contact to Ronan, as you said already last year in Amsterdam. So the simple question is, how is Ronan doing these days?
Well, I spoke to Ronan a little while ago, and to be truthful, he didn't know who he was talking to, but he was in good form, and I played along with the conversation. I said to him, I'd just seen Robbie Dale, and he said, "Oh, is he on the ship at the moment?" And I said, "Yes, he's on the ship, Ronan." And he said, "I bet he's waving to everybody." And we said, "Yes," and whatever. And he was in very good form. And I've spoken to Martin, who has an expertise in the field of dementia and Alzheimer's disease and whatever. And you know, it's a sad case for Paul Ronan, but at least he's happy and he's being well looked after, and you know he will. You know, Martin says it's a slow process. So
eine vaskuläre Demenz, eine durchblutungsbedingte Demenzerkrankung, die meistens langsamer verläuft. Ja.
So we wish him well, and you know, if it wasn't for him, none of us would be here today anyway. So it's that's how I think we must remember Ronan.
So the next time, please tell him the German listeners are still there and very happy with it.
So, gentlemen, we finish with the. We would like to take a picture of all of us outside.
A selfie.
Yeah, no. all of us on one picture, and we play another theme tune of Andy's.
Oh gosh.
By a band called Refugee. You remember that?
I do, yeah.
That is
Moraz.
track number 11. Yeah. So thank you again.
Swiss band.
Former members of the Nice, a band called the Nice, and plus Patrick Moraz. Okay, thank you. So, alle an das Bild
That was
denken.
fun. That was fun.
Wonderful.
Don't forget Ferry Eden's wonderful book on RNI.